Hi everyone, welcome to the Astronomy for Fun seasonal Xmas Hangout. This one themed on comets, and we'll go for probably about an hour if we can fit everything in. Just to introduce the team, and first of all I hope you all had a very Merry Christmas and happy festive cheers from all the admin team. I do apologise for all the silly Christmas hats. Seen the Rudolphs, a few more hats if I go through the panel introducing them. So I'll go from what's left to right on my screen. A couple of special guests to introduce to you as well. Okay, so here we have Craig Dawes, member of the admin team.
Hello.
Hi, Craig. Alcoholed up and full of festive cheer, I understand, and some wonderful crazy telescope decorations in the background. Well done, well done. Next we have on my list John McLean, who gave us the wonderful Rosetta mission updates a couple of weeks ago. That's absolutely brilliant, and is guesting with us, the admin team, for this special festive edition on comets. Hiya, John.
Hi all. Merry Christmas.
Margaret next. Hi, Margaret, with the wonderful Google hat.
Hello all.
Hi, Margaret. Matthew Fall next, who wasn't on the last Hangout, or were you, Matthew? I can't remember now. I'll have to play it back. May have been.
I was in the back sending some questions.
Are you still struggling with your 3G this evening, or are you okay?
No, I'm all broadbanded up now, so we'll be
wonderful, wonderful. But as I say, we can always get some technical issues and some dropouts, especially from great distances. And speaking of very great distances, hello to Stephen W. Ramsden. Hiya, Steve.
Hello, everyone from Atlanta, Georgia, home of the hillbillies, swamp people, and etc., etc. I'm privileged to be on, and I appreciate the invite. Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's wonderful having you, and of course the
from the colonies. From the colonies. Sorry.
All the way, and of course, is it director? I forget what the proper title is, but of the Charlie Bates Solar Astronomy.
Yeah, that's me, the director and founder of the Charlie Bates Solar Astronomy Project. Thanks to Astronomy for Fun and other friends in the UK, we are now the highest volume astronomy outreach program in the world, any kind of astronomy, and very proud of that. And I'm very, very, very proud to be involved with AFF over in the UK. Good job, folks.
And fantastic news, and you've got your funding through this year as well.
Yes, thank you so much for that.
Brilliant fundraising effort. And of course the expert on our great comet attractor, being as we're speaking about comets, we of course wouldn't have so much fun with comets without Sun being there. Okay, Tracy next. Hi, Tracy.
Hi.
And wonderful glasses. And the festive Astro Buddy. I think we've got a few other Astro Buddies that might make a bit of an appearance throughout the show a little bit later on. And finally myself, if we didn't lose anyone. And yeah, we won't keep these on too long because my ears are getting very warm already. And also we may see, if I can stand up, the odd, very loud festive jumper. And just to introduce our, which way do we go? Our theme for this evening, we have Comet, also making an appearance. Okay, that's for the wonderful introductions. I guess one of the first questions we'll get out of the way, for open to the panel actually, so I'll probably call on each of you just to say a little something on this topic is, well, why observe comets? So, Craig, as you're first in line on the introductions.
To be honest with you, I mean, I haven't observed many comets. I've tried to do a few, tried to image a few. They're not the easiest things in the world to image. Somebody like Damien Peach would probably be fantastic addition to my back garden to actually help me image comets. But yeah, I mean, it's just another deep sky object, isn't it? It's something else that's out there, that's another target that, you know, you don't always see, that don't come around very often. So yeah, have a go at them.
So I guess we'll see a few member images that you've got in a gallery for us a little bit later on.
Yes, a few of the members actually provided with me some images. I saw their images and instantly removed my images. So,
well, I'm going to show some pretty bad images from my first attempts later on as well. So you wouldn't be alone if you left them in there. Okay, well, what I'll do, John, I'll skip to you and come to you last as our sort of guesting expert. You can pick up on all the errors that everybody else will make. Margaret, have you observed some comets yourself?
I have very recently. Comet Jakes or Jack's been the big one that's been around recently, and probably the first one. Well, it is the first one I imaged. It's just that excitement of seeing something for the first time ever, and once in a lifetime for some of them. They don't come around that often, some of them. So, yeah. And just the excitement of actually being able to find it and get it, and when you actually see it on the screen, just thinking, yes, got that.
Yeah, I think that's part of the attraction, and we'll probably mention a little bit later the fun you can have in sort of tracking them and making sure they're in, well, the field of view is great. Having them in the centre, even better, if that ever happens very often. Okay, Matt, I don't know whether you've had some fun with comets?
Yeah, I have. Well, I had a Pan-STARRS last year. I was trying to show you a picture, actually, but I'm not sure how well the screen share is actually going to work on that. Me and my friend went to the top of Beeley Moor, which is about 600 metres, I think, above sea level, and gorgeous views out to the horizon and below. And the idea was to try and get Pan-STARRS and the moon, which is a lovely crescent at the time, in the same field of view. I'd like to try and show you one picture if I can get it working. I don't know, but the
go for it.
Cloud was absolutely insane that evening, and we just couldn't. I just could never get both in view at the same time. That was my first failed time trying to get any sort of comet. There's a second time, but I might tell you about that later on. A bit more long-winded story. I'm going to try and show you a picture. I don't know whether it'll work, so we'll give it a go. That's it. Oh, now flip back. Let's just try. Can you see that?
It's loading, I think.
How's it going?
It looks very dark.
It is. Is it like pitch black dark?
Yes.
Pretty much.
Can you see that or not? There's a bit of cloud in the middle.
No, it just looks completely black. I don't know whether it's sharing.
Well, there was a crescent moon at the top, about 20%, I think, sort of a moon, and then basically the cloud coming down right down to the horizon. The actual comet is actually at the bottom of the picture quite clearly, but you had to wait and wait and wait, and I think most people, from all the messages coming on the phone over that night, had finished and given up about half an hour before, and we just sort of hung in there, and the sky just cleared enough and managed to get it really low to the horizon, going over the top of one of the quarries in the distance.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think the image itself is dark. I think it's just showing a black screen for some reason.
Okay, I don't know why.
Maybe we try it again a little bit later.
I'll give it a go later on, so I can get it working.
Yeah. Is it in full screen mode or something like that, is it?
It says in your screen sharing, stop.
I
don't know what's going on with that. I'll try and load it up later and come back to it if you want.
Okay. And Steve Ramsden, you get asked questions about comets when you do your school rounds and your outreach?
I do. Thank you for asking that, Andrew, because people know immediately, they recognize immediately some things about our hobby that we don't think are the greatest things, but most people will recognize immediately if you say solar flare, or if they see a picture of a comet, for some reason they know immediately, this is in space and this is something that's cool. And you can look at any historical account of comets, and it's always been a fantastic event that's, people have painted them, have scrolled them. People have always been fascinated with comets. It's one of those things about astronomy that can lure somebody into it immediately. So even though it is mostly done by sissies with nighttime telescopes, it is really, I'm teasing, of course, it is really a fantastic gateway to get someone into astronomy. Especially if, and I don't want to go on, but as an air traffic controller, I had a couple of unique opportunities. One of them was to watch Comet Hale-Bopp from 40,000 feet in the cockpit of an aircraft, and It was unbelievable. Let me tell you, you think it was big in our sky. It filled up the entire cockpit. Yeah, thank you. It filled up the entire cockpit from end to end at 41,000 feet. I was in a military aircraft. And it's just something that inspires people to get involved in astronomy. So I love comets. I, however, am a terrible imager of comets, as witnessed here. There you go. Wait a minute. See that?
Oh yeah, that's pretty good. That's pretty good.
This picture was taken by a point and shoot Canon camera at work right outside of the air traffic control building.
Wow.
And I had all my friends out there. We were all gathered together to watch Comet Pan-STARRS, and I told them all about it and how great it was going to be. And you got out there and you couldn't see a thing. It was almost invisible. It was so small. So in order to prove it was really there, I got out my telescope, a little 80 millimeter that I always carry, and put the point and shoot up there and took this photo of Pan-STARRS. So that's about as good as it gets for me.
That's quality.
It is an absolutely fascinating topic, and I think it's a fantastic gateway into astronomy and even solar astronomy, because the sun is really the main player in why these comets are here.
Yeah.
So I love comets. Thank you.
I mean, it's quite common that the sissy astronomers are also, and also a great proportion of people that just do astronomy from home and looking at the various SOHO telescopes and the coronagraphs that are around for the LASCO images, in particular, capturing sun grazing comets.
Yeah, it's an exciting thing to see, and the SOHO mission has caught over 2,600 sun grazing comets on film, which changed the way we view comets altogether in the last 20 years. So it is a great way to get someone involved in astronomy, and it changes. You know, it looks different. It's something that's moving. There's action going on, and that's what draws people to solar astronomy. Also, is that it's different every time you look at it. Mm-hmm. So I feel a kindred spirit with comets and with people that observe comets. I love them.
It brings in people that can't afford their own telescopic equipment either, or to purchase equipment, just using the LASCO images on the internet.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or if they're big enough, you can use these eyeballs.
Yes, the Mark 1 eyeballs, absolutely like perfect.
They are.
Yeah.
So.
Well, it's funny you should say that, because if I can just screen share this a second, and everyone see that?
There you go.
That's the Bayer Tapestry from 1066, and clearly on that top right-hand corner there is a comet, and I believe it's Halley's comet as well. So
yeah, you've just stolen my thunder.
Does?
Oh, I'm very sorry. I do apologise.
Actually, if you show that again, Craig,
okay,
does mark a real good resemblance to the Starship Enterprise, I thought.
I'll just change this hat for a tinfoil one.
I don't know if you have that guy on there that talks about ancient aliens on BBC or not, but we have a guy on TV here, a Greek guy that's constantly showing those images and those etchings, and talking about how aliens started out the human race and things like that. But again, it's a big draw for the crowd. Anytime you talk about comets, everybody wants to see it, and it's a big draw. So that can't be bad.
There you go.
It's very good. Oh yeah. There we go. Yeah.
Does look like Starship Enterprise.
I'll just get a picture working there.
Yeah, I can see it now. So we just switched to Matthew's picture. If you want to just show where the objects were again.
Yeah. Okay. So, sort of a top centre, just off the right, is the moon, and the comet is down in the cloud there, right below it. And as the evening progressed, it moved on to the comet in the middle and the cloud covering the moon above, to very late on the evening. It's a bit more of a crop, but this was a 50mm lens. Just at the top, and like sort of 15-20 second exposure. And this quarry here is probably about 20 miles away, right in the distance, and a real horizon is sort of just above the cloud line there, which is so high up.
You can definitely see it.
Absolutely, yeah. So you can see it right there.
Yeah.
The idea was to try and get that sort of killer shot, really, of the moon and that, but it never really worked out. I seem to fail miserably at comet chasing.
Hey, somebody mentioned Damien earlier, and I did an interview with Damien on Australian radio a few months ago.
That's right.
And looking at his comet pictures, of course, I immediately abandoned any hope of taking any comet images, but they are so unbelievably beautiful. It is hard to imagine how anything like that can exist in nature. It is just such an incredibly alluring image to just look at Damien's images. And I told him that on air, and of course he's a very shy person. But you know, he understands that, and people must say that to him all the time because his images of comets are. It's like seeing, you know, a Wagner done perfectly for the first time, or you know, it's art and science. So I love that.
I mean, I look at my own images, and I always don't get everything very sharp and in focus. But looking at Damien, even the tail structure on these things, are absolutely beautiful.
It's incredible, incredible.
It's really amazing to watch, and you know, and he doesn't have any attitude about it at all. He loves to share them all with everybody. But just watching, just looking at them is amazing. And when you can see that through the eyepiece, which you can with any small telescope, it kind of makes you feel that you're a part of it too, because you can look through your scope, and it's not the easiest thing in the world, but if you move your scope around and you find that comet, you have accomplished something, and you have gotten in touch with the same thing Damien Peach is putting out, and the same thing that these guys etched in 1066. You're now a part of it because you've seen it with your own eyes too. Yeah. And I think that's part of what draws people to the hobby in general.
Yeah. Well, I remember I was on night shift, and when ISON was up, and I actually saw ISON on night shift with binoculars, and that's the only view I actually got of it was with binoculars. And yeah, okay, it was a bit wonky, you know, in the view sort of thing, but you could clearly see that it was a comet, and that was amazing.
Oh yeah,
fantastic. Okay, better just ask Tracy as well. How's your comet observing been?
Well, after all of that, I don't think I can add much more as to why we should observe comets. Because as everyone's mentioned, they are absolutely spectacular. Myself, I've managed to catch Pan-STARRS, that was wide field, and that was just as it was passing through Andromeda. It wasn't. So an image I've actually got to see and Pan-STARRS in, and that was sort of a very lucky shot, to be honest. I've also got Comet Jacks, which I've got an image to show you later. That was quite a nice comet, and I managed to catch the tail on that one. So, my sort of interest is obviously the astrophotography part, and comets present a new challenge. And as Stephen's already mentioned, they are absolutely incredible. And when you actually capture them as a picture, it's fantastic. So, that's my addition there. So, thanks.
That's great. We'll hopefully have time to show these various images a little bit later on. I just see in the Q&A Gary M saying it's not worth, seems pointless posting his in the bin. No, throw it in there, Gary M. We'll see if we can pick it up off the Facebook group a little bit later on. If you post that, we like to see images from everyone of all abilities, you know, whether they're starting out, and I'll show you a few of my first images, which were some of them on film, in fact, if anyone remembers film.
Yeah, Gary, I'm showing my first image over here on the screen too, so you can compare it.
Oh, yeah. That's a very good first. If we were to believe that, we'd all give up now.
No, Damien Peach's beautiful shot. So.
Yeah, that's gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous. Okay, I suppose we better talk about what actually a comet is. I guess, John, if you're the best person to answer this one for us, if I may call upon you.
Okay, well, thanks for having me on your Hangout. It's nice to see you all in real time as opposed to Facebook or whatever. So it's quite good to put faces to the names. Right. Well, let me just say about comets. I first got interested in comets many years ago, mainly because I was involved in a few projects with comets, and I got interested in the science of comets because comets are generally the most pristine things in the universe that we can actually see and observe. They come from the leftover from the formation of the solar system. So, you know, just as Rosetta mission has been, we might talk about that later, and I'm actually wearing my Rosetta mission T-shirt. Yeah. And it's because they're leftovers from the solar system. They're fascinating things to observe and to study. And I mean, comets, we think of them as being huge items. We think of the likes of 67P Churyumov-Gerasimenko being a big, massive object, and in fact they're quite small. comets. And as we know now, they're icy, hard, very hard dirt balls flying through space, and it's where they come from is quite interesting as well. And perhaps I can just put this up for you. Hang on. Let me just get on here a second. Oh, that was one of my. Just get rid of Craig's thing. Bear with me a second. Got all my Rosetta stuff here.
Just while you're doing that, John, I just want to show I've also got my Rosetta T-shirt on.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, you carry on. Just I've gone past where I was going to go. That was all. Right, hang on. Okay. Let's see. Right, this is it. Okay, right. Where do comets actually come from? Well, there's two main places where comets come from, and I'll just put this up on the screen. Can you see that?
Yes, see that fine, John.
Okay, that's so
Yeah,
basically what that is a representation of the two main areas where comets come from. We have the Kuiper belt, as we see there, that orange track at the top of the screen there, and we have what we call the Oort cloud, which is very difficult to say when you're Scottish. So it's the Oort cloud is a massive sphere which encircles our solar system, and it's absolutely full of comets. And they tend to be what we call long period comets, whereas the comets from the Kuiper belt tend to be shorter period comets. Long period comets can take millions of years to actually travel around the solar system and come back again, whereas short period comets generally take a few hundred years. So that's just where they come from. There's lots and lots of interesting things with comets. Craig, of course, has mentioned already about the. Let me just get that off. Craig's already mentioned about Halley's Comet and the Bayou Tapestry. Of course, the Chinese kept a very good record of comets, and it was really the Chinese and their records that led us to stop believing that comets were messages from the gods, portents of doom. And there are very many countries in the world that always thought that these things were portents of doom. And in fact, they've been known as the fiery sword. They've been known as the witch's ponytail. And in fact, I'm not sure if many people know this, but Pope Calixtus III actually excommunicated Halley's Comet.
Oh, wow.
So, in case you didn't know that, okay. So, there's a few things about comets. I love comets because they are so fascinating, and the recent Rosetta mission has told us so much more about comets already. One of the main things it's told is that they are very, very hard. As one of my friends who was part of the MUPUS team and who was giving me a lot of information during the mission, actually was in charge of the drill, the MUPUS drill, which failed to penetrate the comet. But wow. we can talk about that later. Another thing I'd just like to mention about comets, just to start off with, is that we still have these doomsday cults. We still have them that believe that comets hide spaceships. And of course, one of the most famous ones was Heaven's Gate. And Heaven's Gate was a cult that believed that the Halley's Comet, they believed that there was a spaceship hiding behind the comet, and that it would send a beam down and it would drag them all up into the spaceship, and they could all fly away to heaven or rapture or wherever it was going to be. Of course, we now know that was false because they all died. Well, there you go. So, anyway, comets. If anybody's got any questions on comets, I'll be more than happy to answer them, or questions on the Rosetta mission, or on NASA's the Siding Springs investigations, because part of what I do is I belong to, I'm part of NASA's Coordinated Investigation Team. So it's we do a lot of work on various things there, like analysing the brightness of comets and the spectroscopy of comets, etc., etc.
Well, that's great. Thank you very much, John. And we appreciated very much your updates of Rosetta mission as we went through on the and followed it on the Facebook group. That was absolutely brilliant. And we'll certainly come back to that, I think, and maybe get some questions in on that before we finish. I noticed Steve's put up a what looks like a LASCO image.
Yeah, that is from LASCO, and that's the comet that wasn't. After it went around the sun. Yeah.
If I could interrupt you there, Stephen, it was quite interesting, Comet ICE, because I was working on analysing the data on Comet ICE on November the 28th at 8:30 our time here. And as the comet approached, that was my only other Google Hangout, actually. I was talking to the NASA team. And if you remember rightly, and Steve will understand this, 28th of November that last year was Thanksgiving. Now, we don't celebrate Thanksgiving in the UK, but of course they do in America. And at the time, the comet approached the sun, and there was a lot of discussion about would the comet survive. It was already starting to break up, we knew that. But would it survive? And as it went into the sun, NASA had a quick conference, and they were looking at the SOHO and LASCO images, and they announced that the comet was dead. There was nothing left of it. It hadn't reappeared from the sun. That particular image that Stephen's shown was one of the images I used, and I said to them, I said, hang on a minute, it's still there. don't be so silly, of course it's not. I said, it's still there. I said, I'm looking at it. And I put together stacked him in animation like that very quickly, literally in a minute or so. And they said, well, what evidence are you using? And I said, I'm using your evidence. I'm part of the team that's analysing the data. And anyway, it turned out I was right, they were wrong. So unfortunately, as often happens in science, they had already announced it to the press that nothing had survived the comet and nothing had come out the other side.
Right.
At that point, my phone started ringing with CNN, Fox News. I put them off. And various other people ringing up. And private messages started to come in from the NASA team. I said, you do realise it's Thanksgiving, do you? And I said, is it? And what it was they were all desperate to get off for the dinner.
Yeah, I'm sure of that.
And they hadn't really looked at the data. They hadn't looked at the latest images coming in. So they had to issue an apology. So that's a true story about ISON. That's what actually happened. And I ended up at 3 o'clock in the morning here on CNN, and I was on Fox News and Sky News and everything else.
Fantastic.
It was quite fun. It was quite fun, I've got to say.
I can remember sitting here watching it in the morning the entire time, getting every update I could possibly get from SOHO and STO, and it was so crowded with users that it would take 3 or 4 minutes to get an updated image. It was really, really overwhelmed with bandwidth issues, but it was a very, very exciting time. And what David Eicher here, who's a friend of mine who runs Astronomy Magazine, had kind of based his whole existence on this comet for several months. And it was going to be the greatest thing ever, and the magazine focused on it. And it was going to be the biggest thing in the sky, and people were going to see Jesus and everything else. It was going to be the most fantastic thing that ever occurred, and then it just kind of vanished. So it was up and down that day, and then we saw it again for a while, and then it was just a very up and down situation the whole time it was there.
Yeah. Well, what actually was left of the comet as it broke up as it went around the sun, but. It broke into 2 nuclei. That was the interesting thing. There were two nuclei, and then it splintered into dust. But for quite a time after it went around the sun, there was still a significant amount of material there held together, and that was the interesting point, because as a sun grazes a comet, quite a few don't make it. But this was very hopeful that this would make it be the brightest object in the night sky. In fact, you'd be able to see it really brightly in daytime. Of course, as Steve said, it never happened.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think everyone was quite cautious on sort of approaching that with the media, and until the very last moment when everybody got super excited when it was actually rounding the sun, and then everything went out the window, and all sorts of lessons that were learned on previous comets were suddenly forgotten.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I think it was great. I mean, with pictures like this that Steve's showing, if you were following this on the LASCO images, then you definitely followed it, and you definitely saw images of it. It's just the fact that it never became naked eye afterwards that people were really looking forward to, particularly in the northern hemisphere, to see a wonderful tail. But I don't know, maybe this there's a few in this year already with Lovejoy that we'll probably mention a bit later that we can be able to view in January or throughout January, maybe up until the end of February. And maybe we see something from that, but there's a few great ones to come this year, I think. There's certainly plenty on the itinerary. Matt, I see you're showing an image, and was this the one you said had a story behind it?
I do, yeah. It's a bit of a long-winded story, so I'll try and keep it for you. If you fall asleep, give me a nod or something. This image is from the Tuesday the 19th of November 2013, and it's from my friend Simon Wilson, who lives just down the road, texting me at 3 in the morning. You can see Comet Race on visible naked eye. So the story is though that I'd spent about 3 months building up a little special wide-angle rig to take the pictures with, and I watched the weather, and the weather was so bad I was like tempting to get out in the morning, like for 45 minutes, just to try and image it in the clear spell. But it was solid cloud for months. That particular night, I'd set up at about 7:30 in the evening, all dialed everything in over about 2 hours, all ready to go, 9:30, lashed down with rain, filled up the end of the telescope with water. So put it all in the kitchen, all the wires everywhere, drying it off. My other half comes home from guides about 10 o'clock, 10:30 at night, goes, "Why aren't you outside?" I said, "Oh, I'm soaked and giving up for the night." So I went to bed in a bit of a huff, and sort of relating to what we were saying earlier on, astronomy is one of those hobbies you shouldn't give up on. Because say Simon's texting me 3:30 in the morning, 4 o'clock in the morning, saying, "You've got to get out, I can see it from a balcony." And he took this on an 85mm scope with a fairly standard sort of CCD camera.
Wow.
Just brilliant image. I think it was in Sky at night, and he did really well that image. It was such a lovely end, and literally a couple of days later, looking at the info just posted up with John and Stephen there, it disappeared round in the back of the sun, and that was it, never to be seen again. So it's a date that sticks in my mind very sort of vividly, really, because it was sort of, if I hadn't have packed up or reset up again, and we've shared some amazing times together, me and Simon. He was with me at the top of Beeley Moor and pictures earlier on, sort of showing those ones from the type. So it's such a site, as I think Stephen was saying earlier on, it's such a good sort of getting people together and to talk about astronomy and get out and do a bit of sort of looking and gazing. And sometimes you only get that one chance, and you need to sort of basically get out and do it. And I think Simon's image for me there just sort of like epitomises that. If I'd stuck at it, I'd have actually slightly tighter view on it. And I might have rotated the camera a bit. It's a cracking image, though.
It's gorgeous, yeah.
Absolutely. Of course, when you look at the tail of comets, does everyone know about the tail of comets, or the comet's tail? Does everyone's aware of where it come from?
I doubt it, John. Let's go ahead, explain.
Well, comets generally have two tails. Although you quite often just see one, there's actually two tails. One tail is due to dust particles, and the other is due to ionized gas from the comet, and this is known as the coma. The dust particles that form the first tail generally point back along the path of the comet. So if the comet is traveling to the right, then the tail extends to the left, of course. Now, the other tail, the ionized tail, comes from ionized electrically charged particles. And these come from the nucleus originally as neutral gaseous particles, and they are swept into the second comet tail. But this is the bit for Stephen, because of the special interaction with the sun's magnetic field, the tail always points directly away from the sun. So as Stephen said, comets are fascinating things. So is the sun, and here we have the reason for the tails interacting with the sun. And it's very interesting that, for instance, some of the tails that you see in the photographs from Damien, for instance. And I have one of Pan-STAR's there. I think Craig's already got it, actually. And the tail stretches literally hundreds and hundreds, if not millions of miles. The tails can stretch. So when we see a comet in a single frame image with a tail behind it or in front of it, whatever, it's the dust tail particularly can be millions of miles long, and that to me is just incredible. You know, it's really cool.
There you go. There's your image.
I was just going to say, Craig, maybe we can go through a gallery of a few images, including John's, and maybe commentary on any interesting features you see, John.
Yeah, well, you can see that it's not as pretty an image as Damien's, but you can see what I did with this image. I wanted to see the different parts of the comet as much as I could, and just in monochrome. So it's not done in colour, this one. I have another colour one, but I don't know where it is. I think Craig might have that one as well. I'm not sure.
Yeah, that one.
But in this particular, that's the one. Yeah, that's Comet Pan-STARs from last year. Now in this, you can actually see the different colours generated by the different gases in the coma of the comet. In the first one, you can see the long dust tail, and you can just faintly see the ionized tail at the front. And that's the one that's up there now. So you can see the different aspects of the comet and the tail, and of course at the centre you have the nucleus. And as we know now from 67P, well, the information we have at the moment, that nucleus is extremely hard. Now the tail gets bigger, the coma gets bigger, the closer it gets to the sun, because it begins to sublimate. Sublimation is an interesting part of science in itself, because it's when a solid actually turns into a gas without becoming liquid. So that's quite interesting as well. So comets are fascinating. They're mind-blowing things. You know, they're just cool stuff.
And this, Craig, this is one that's in the sky at the moment. I think this 15P Finlay.
Oh, is it? Okay. Yes, Nick Everts took it from the Canary Islands.
Yeah, it's quite low, I think, from the UK at the moment, but it does pop above the horizon at the moment. It's one that could become quite bright.
John, if I might, I think Damien would be the first person to tell you that all those comet photos were absolutely beautiful, and that there is no bad comet photo, and I would also agree with him. And to me, I hope I'm not interrupting again, but to me, the vast emptiness of our solar system, and the fact that these microscopic dust particles coming off this comet's head for millions of miles reflect sunlight. You know, they're not producing light. They're reflecting sunlight into your eyes all the way back here on Earth. And to me, just thinking about the fact that that's all microscopic dust for millions and millions of miles reflecting sunlight into my eyes is absolutely fascinating to me. So
that's Tracy's image. So Tracy wants to explain that one for us.
Yeah, this is my Comet Jack. It was taken on the 23rd of August. I believe I got around 100 second images at ISO 800 using my Canon DLSR image through my 80mm William optic scope. It was all processed then through Deep Sky Stacker using the Comet Stacker, so that's why we've got the trailing stars on there. But I was quite pleased with this one because I think the core is quite bright on this one, and the tail, through a lot of other people's images, the tail was quite difficult to get, and I've just managed to capture that in this image. You can just see it there. It's quite faint. But that's probably one. Well, it is my best comet image, so I'm quite proud of that.
How are you guiding that one, Tracy? Because I noticed the stars are trailing, and the comet is very sharp and distinct.
This was just normal guide rate, so one time for the side wheel. It's just the way that it was stacked in Deep Sky Stacker, because you have two options in Deep Sky Stacker when it comes to comet processing. So you can either select the comet, which it will just stack on the comet itself, and then obviously because of the movement of the stars, then you pick that up in the image. There's also a second option where you can stack on both the comet and the stars, and then that will give you the stars pinpoint and the comet in a pinpoint, so you don't see any of the star trail in there. So this one was just on comet alone. I know before myself and Matthew, we spoke to Nick Howes at the Northwest Astro, and he told us that there is a way that you can plug the data into EQ mod, which will actually track the comet itself. So you can do it that way. I don't know if Matt's tried it that way before, and I don't know how much success he's had, but I've usually found that just by tracking normal side reel, I've managed to do okay. I don't know if Matt wants to add anything onto that with the actual tracking.
As I say, I'm not the best comet chaser in the world. I've got most of the kit, but I've never been able to get on them because they're closer. But yeah, basically download the ephemeris data, I think, from the Small Planets Association webpage. I could find it if people want to find it where it is. And basically, you download the data into EQ mod, and then basically it replaces the custom sidereal rates to then just track on the comet. And I think the sort of wise decision is to actually try and do a bit of both. So you're averaging out, so you're actually tracking the rotation of the Earth, and you're tracking the thing, and use a joypad to sort of nudge it and keep it on centre. And it's certainly, I think, what the professional teams do. It just gives you that edge in sort of getting the crisp comet image. And then what you do is you go back the next night, which is a luxury to have in our skies in the UK, to actually go back the next night or the previous night. You take the same field of view without the comet in it, and then you overlay the stars on top. So it's actually a lot more complicated, and sometimes you see images and it sort of says, I don't know, it's 1 sec, a 30-second exposure on each of the colour filters. Sometimes it's a lot of work and a lot of planning has to go into those images, and sometimes, like I say, a bit of luck and hard work and getting the mount out and getting set up second or third night to get the blank picture on it really. So some of those images are absolutely stunning, I think. And Tracy tried there with DSS, and sometimes it just doesn't work on both, does it?
Yeah, no, sometimes I've struggled if I've tried to do stack the star field and then stack the comet and do a combo, and it doesn't like it. I mean, you have to be very accurate with the way that you're selecting your comet, I think, because in the Deep Sky Stacker, you have to actually go through and select ones that can mess up with the way that it calculates the final image.
And obviously you've got field curvature and all sorts going on. I mean, I've tried it. I think there's other bits of software now that I could probably do it a little bit better in, if I can get a data. I'm looking at having a go at Lovejoy, but we'll have to just wait and see what happens with the weather in the UK. I mean, this time last year we were cloudy out till about April, so I'm not holding out much hope at the moment.
Yeah. Well, just Craig, on a few of these, if you want to flick back to one, I noticed quite a few of them are green.
Yeah, they've got a green tinge to the.
Yeah. What causes that, John?
That's copper.
Hey.
There you go. Easy, isn't it? There's a nice one now by Andy Milner showing the core and everything of Comet Jacks.
Yeah.
And then this one's by you, Alan, and I'm just finding the details. And Comet Jacks again from August. So that was Comet Jacks.
That shows the two different ways that you can stack. So
yeah, that's a perfect example.
Yeah, they've stacked only on the comet itself, and that's why we've got the star trails. And then on the bottom one, they've done both star field and the comet, and that's why we've got that crisper star field there. But personally, I quite like it with the star trails because it shows that's personal preference.
It shows the movement as well of the actual comet, doesn't it? That one's by Titch, who's one of our members, and it is one and only image of a comet, and it's Pan Stars from 2014. And yeah, they're all lovely images.
Very nice. One thing just say about stacking comet images, I don't use DSS, and people like Nick Howes and myself, we use Axon DL to stack and align the images. And then of course when you put it in Photoshop, actually stretch the data and pull out more data in the tail, more detail in the tail. So that's one way of doing it. Of course, not everybody's got Maxim DL, but that's how we do it.
Excellent. And what about this one?
Well, don't forget the Mercury Comet, which was a popular hot rod in the U.S. in the in the 70s, and this was a pile of junk car that had a gigantic engine in it, and it was actually named the Mercury Comet. Can you see that there?
That's beautiful.
5.0 liter. It was known for its exploding gas tank and high fatality rate.
Okay, no, it's not that nice.
And let's not forget, of course, the very first commercial airliner, jet airliner, which was called the de Havilland Comet.
That's exactly right. Yeah, they've inspired people for a long time.
Well, comets in history have had this fascination for the whole world. There was an interesting story back in the 1700s where a comet was visible for weeks in the sky, and it was bright red. Now, for the life of me, I can't remember if it was Halley's Comet or not. But this particular comet hung in the sky during the day in a bright red, and of course, people are split about it because some people thought that this was a harbinger of doom, and other people thought it was a good omen. So you know, who was going to be right? I mean, somebody had to be correct, but
either way, somebody was going to be correct. Yeah, no matter what happened, someone would claim victory.
Well, I guess if you look back at the Battle of Hastings, was it Alfred, King Alfred, and that? So it was William the Conqueror, I think, was the winner on that one, wasn't he? So somebody lost and somebody won.
That's right, absolutely. Well, they did in fact think, William the Conqueror did think that it was a good omen. Well, King Harold thought it was a bad omen because of the different cultures. And as you say, you know, William the Conqueror was right. But there you go. But the other thing about comets, of course, is that up until very recently, we thought that comets brought water to the Earth. We've often wondered where the water came from, the vast oceans that we have that cover the Earth. And the theory was, up until just a couple of weeks ago, that it came from comets. And of course, that was part of the Rosetta mission. And unfortunately, what's happened is that when they've analysed the water on 67P, they found that it's different from the water. The chemical analysis is different from the water on Earth. Which
is it what they call dark water, John?
It's
dark
heavy.
water, yeah.
It's like heavy water. It's the sort of thing that you make nuclear weapons out of. But it's a different chemical makeup, which means that it could possibly be the water that came to Earth. So where did it come from? That's one common one to remember. So, you know, maybe when we've landed on another 10,000, we might find that the different comets have a different chemical makeup. It's one of these things we just don't know, and it's interesting when people ask you about these things. When people, not people like yourselves, I mean lay people that don't know anything about astronomy or comets or asteroids or anything, and they often say, "Oh well, you never know, do you? You scientists, you just don't know anything," because you always say, "Well, we don't know." Well, of course we don't know. We don't know until we know, and when we know, then we try and find out why we know. Stephen's a perfect example of this. I saw something he was talking about when he was over here, and he was talking about photons and how they move through the sun, and of course we've never been there. We've never been to the sun. We've never been inside the sun. We don't know, but it's the best theory we have. And that's the thing about science. We work on best theories, and it's exactly the same with comets. The best theory we had was that water came from comets. Now we have to think of a different theory, and what we'll do is we'll back that theory up with evidence until the point comes where that theory breaks down.
That's the great thing about science in general, in that if presented with evidence to the contrary, it may take a little while, like Galileo, but we're more than willing to change our views.
Yeah. But of course, that wasn't the only thing that Rosetta was going to find out. We have this orbiter, riding the comet essentially, and going to ride the comet all the way around the sun and outwards as well. Yep. Perhaps, is there an update on that, John, on the Rosetta mission itself?
Yeah. The latest thing that's happening with Rosetta itself, actually the orbiter, is that it's recently moved to within 10 kilometers of the comet again, because after the lander mission ended, the first part of the lander mission ended, what happened was that the orbiter pulled away from the comet, still retaining its orbit, but pulled away to a further distance, about 60 kilometers, between 30 and 60 kilometers originally. It's then, last week it moved back in again just to take some more images, because they're still looking for the lander. That's the point, we still don't know where it is. We've got a good idea where it is, a very good idea where it is, and you may have seen an image that came out 2 or 3 days ago of this massive cliff, a huge cliff.
Yeah.
Remember, you see that? Well, it's quite possible that Philly is somewhere near that cliff. What will happen to the Rosetta orbiter now is that it will follow the comet as it goes around the sun, and of course, as it goes around the sun, the comet's going to more sunlight is going to land on the comet. Hopefully, it'll land on Philly's solar panels, and they'll be able to wake it up again and continue the experiments. Remember, of course, that the first part, the experiments were always in 2 phases. They were always in 2 parts, and part 1 was completed, and it was completed, and we got 100% of the data. So that was mission complete. That was a mission achieved. The second part of the mission, which was relying on extra batteries which were charged by the solar panels, was going to be extra experiments. They weren't part of the original mission. So they weren't able to do that. But hopefully, as Rosetta goes around the sun, we'll get more than the 25 minutes or whatever sunlight it's getting at the moment. And they need something like 6.5 hours sunlight per day to charge the batteries. Hopefully they'll get charged up. They'll wake Philly up again, and it will start to carry out its experiments again. Meanwhile, the orbiter will be observing the comet as it goes round, and as it goes round the sun, it will start to sublimate, and more gases will come off the comet. The Rosetta orbiter will be able to analyse those gases, and of course that will tell us more and more about what the comet's made of.
Yeah. Will the satellite itself have to move further away than 10 kilometers, or?
No. In fact, what it'll do is it'll move it a bit closer. They'll actually move it in a bit closer, and then eventually they'll move it back out again as it goes around the sun. But they want to get it in to about 10 kilometers again. Mm-hmm. So that's the aim, is to get it into about 10 kilometers, and so they can sample the gases, etc.
Reference
the ionized particles.
Reference the actual lander. Am I correct in thinking it's actually on its side?
Yeah, well, this is an interesting point, because in space there is no up.
In comparison to the comet itself.
Relative to the comet, yes, it's on its side, yeah. Remember, it's got 3 legs to the lander. It hasn't got 4 legs, it's got 3 legs. Now, it looks like one of them is up in the air, or leaning against something, and the other 2 are at the bottom. Just sort of clinging on to the comet itself. Interestingly, if the harpoons had fired where it finally ended up, they think it would have probably blown it off the comet completely. Because the thruster was broken. There's a thruster on the top of the lander, which was due to when the harpoons fire, it would fire, and the opposite and equal forces would keep the lander where it was, while the harpoons fired into the ice. Now, again, because of what the Mupus experiment discovered when it tried to drill into the comet, it's unlikely those harpoons would have got into the comet anyway, because it's extremely hard. It is very much harder than they thought it was going to be. So, yeah, but it's on its side. That doesn't really matter, other than the fact that the solar panels were in shade, because it could still carry out its experiments. The only thing that it couldn't do was the cameras that are all round the side of the lander couldn't get a full panoramic picture. That was the only thing.
Oh, well.
Excellent, thank you, John. I just see a couple of questions in the Q&A. one, I don't know whether the images are on the panel can have a go at these, is talking about the field of view. So one of them saying he has an 8-inch Newtonian and plans to image Comet Lovejoy in January, and would it fit in the field of view of his DSLR 1100D? So I mean, I guess the good thing about comets is they look good at all sorts of fields of view. It's just how much of it do you want to capture, and even, you know, you can talk about wide field mosaics. So I don't know whether the images have some comments on that question.
Yeah, well, sorry, go on, Drew.
I think bigger aperture and that sort of scope, you're going to want a bigger sensor, and you're probably going to want smaller pixel sizes of a DSLR. 1100D is about a medium sort of size pixel, I think, for DSLR. So I think that's actually probably going to be quite a good match. I'll contact you after if you want, Gary. I think you can work out the field of view. I don't know how big the comet's going to be by that point. So in January, I mean, it's fairly big at the moment. Looking at some of the images coming in, on my scope, I would only get the nucleus and a little bit of the tail on my sensor size already. So if it's going to keep growing and that tail keeps getting larger as you go up towards January, then I think another few weeks yet. I don't know what the actual sort of size of it's going to be.
Well, this is an image shot with an 8-inch Newtonian and published on spaceweather.com when it, you know, the last year when it was around. So this is whether it's cropped or not, I don't know, but this was shot with an 8-inch Newtonian and posted on Space Weather. Okay, so I would imagine if it's a standard Dobsonian, did he say the focal length?
No, it doesn't say anything about this.
It's probably a F10 Dob then. I would imagine that you would be able to fit about 15 of the comets into that field of view, and you'd be more worried about zooming in rather than zooming out.
Yeah, I would agree. I would agree with that. I tend to use refractors or SCT for comets. I use an 80mm refractor, and I'll easily get you know, the comet and most of it clearly. On the 80mm refractor. On the 6-inch SCT, you get quite a wide field on it. You'll get a good image out of that.
Yeah.
Not that I know anything about nighttime imaging.
Yeah, I mean, those that are particularly active as well, I'd imagine just camera lenses, sort of 300mm camera lenses, and that ilk could be also very good.
I would suggest, not that I'm a deep sky imager, but a 300mm fast zoom lens with a full size DSLR would probably be the best way the average person can do it, or you could have Damien Peach's outfit. But if I were trying to shoot a comet, I would put a DSLR with a 300mm zoom lens on a guided mount, you know, on top of your telescope or something. That'd be the way I try to do it.
Yeah. There's also a question about.
You can do it with an AstroTrack DSLR mount. You can do it. I've seen people that have done that, and I mean, I'm using bigger mounts. I'm using sort of big NEQ6s and things like that. But you can use an AstroTrack mount or the new Skywatcher mount. Was it called Sky Tracker or something?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, often the sort of popular or great comets are fairly bright as well, so the exposure times are not all that massive, I would have thought.
No.
Yeah, it's interesting that when you see how small they look, the comets, don't they? I don't know if everybody saw the picture. Let me just get this up. The picture that was available. Where is it? Here we go again. Here we go. Right. Okay, this will give you an idea of the size, the relative size of a comet.
We don't see it. Oh, wait a minute. There you go.
You got it now? Yeah?
Yeah.
That's Comet 67P Churyumov-Gerasimenko over Los Angeles. So that's sort of how big it is. So when we talk, and that's a very small comet. So when we talk about the fact that comets are small objects, and they are small objects in relation to what else is out there in the universe, you know, and that is a small object. So, you know, it's quite frightening when you think about what could happen if one of those things hit Los Angeles.
Yeah.
I mean,
It also illustrates how dark they are as well.
Yeah. We'd have no more movies.
That would be the only good benefit of it.
That's right.
Yeah. If only it landed as gently as that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
What surprises me, actually, to be fair, as somebody who's, you know, not vastly knowledgeable about comets and that, is the actual is the colour of it. It looks like a rock, as opposed to, you know, what we were always told is a dirty snowball sort of thing. It actually looks like more of an asteroid than what you expect it to look like.
Yeah. Well, that actually is, Craig. Is it all right for me to jump in and answer this?
Yeah, crack on.
Yeah. I seem to be monopolising things here, don't I?
That's why you're here. You're the expert.
Well, what that actually is, when you look at that, the surface, and of course remember the pictures that we are seeing were mostly mono pictures from Rosetta and from Philly. Most of the pictures were mono. There were some colour pictures, but they weren't very good because there wasn't any colour.
Yeah.
Basically, it's not a very colourful comet. What you're seeing is the accumulated, and it is accumulated dark dust, almost like soot. It's almost like soot that covers the white ice of the comet. Now, if you dug under that dust surface, you would see ice, water type ice. So it would be much brighter. But of course, it's covered and it looks like rock, but it's not rock. There are lots of rocks in it, but it's mixed up and jumbled up. And it's a bit like if you go outside onto your pathway after it's been snowing, and you've got a gravel pathway, and you take a handful of snow, and you find all the chunks of gravel in the snow. It's a bit like that, except there's a lot more chunks of gravel. And the difference is that this comet, as opposed to a snowball, is there's lots of this black sooty dust on the outside of it. And it gets attracted to it because it has a charge. You know, so it does get attracted to it. Another interesting thing about that is, of course, that when it sublimates, all the gases all blow this off, and the comet will get brighter. It will get brighter as it goes around the sun. So yeah, it looks like a rock, but it's not a rock.
I've just flicked through a few images that I've taken throughout the years.
Hale-Bopp, that was Heaven's Gate.
Hale-Bopp even. I think I must have had a zoom lens on the camera because I seem to have three bigger and bigger. And this was taken on film, so I've actually scanned these prints into a computer from the days I was using film. So it's my very early days, so I've got no record of when I took this or what the equipment was. Not very mindful of taking such details then, just sort of pointing and shooting as best I could. But that was a brilliant comet at the time. Another one of Comet Neat, two shots of that of different exposures. Fairly dirty processing, I have to say, in the earlier days. Again, I've got no idea when this was taken, so my bad. But also, with access to remote telescopes like SLU, you can get some of the fainter comets, so they don't need to be these greatest comets that are sort of winding around the sun and getting very bright and having very long tails. It's also great fun to use telescopes to get some of the fainter ones. And what you learn about this is learning how to use your planetarium software to get the coordinates to aim such telescopes. And using the correct coordinates, and one thing that you learn from this, again, you can sort of put images side by side, sort of 10 minutes apart, 30 minutes apart, because one great thing about comets is they actually move, and sometimes they move so fast that you can see this in real time, not very often in the eyepiece, but certainly photographically, you can sort of flip between two images and actually see movement of the comet. Makes it also easy to identify. And John, you were on about the size of the nucleus, and this is Comet Holmes in outburst.
Oh yeah.
But you know, even we're not even seeing the nucleus on this, even though we see this very tiny dot in the centre. It's still the coma, I would imagine.
Yeah.
That was a beautiful comet that was totally unexpected to Brighton. But you know, as we see can often happen that they surprise us, a bit like cats. I think they've been described that they have tails and do what they want.
Of course, the comets that we see, the long period comets that have travelled for millions and millions of miles, if they tend to come near the sun, they sublimate quite a lot, and you'll get a large coma and a large comet's tail. They are usually coming from the Oort cloud, which is about 50,000 astronomical units away, something like that. Whereas the Kuiper belt is just beyond the orbit of Neptune. So they have different characteristics, and then we have the comets that we call sun grazer comets, and they're the ones that come very close to the sun. Carl Battens knows a lot about sun grazer comets, and when Ison was a sun grazer comet, but unfortunately it grazed a bit too much and, as we know, disappeared. But yeah, I mean, some comets don't go near the sun at all. They go around the sun, but they're quite a long distance away from the sun, so they don't sublimate as much and they don't give off as much gas as other comets.
Yeah, and particularly these ones where I've taken an image where they're so far away, or they're sort of very small, or on very wide orbits, perhaps. One thing I will say about again using the star charts is finding the comet. Usually they're obvious if they're a bit fuzzier than the rest of the objects that you see, but it does learn you to take particular note of the star patterns. Like we can see this star here, and these three around the bottom, and then two here are exactly the same as these three here and the two there. So you do become quite expert over a number of evenings when you're watching these comets and imaging them, in recognizing the star patterns around them. So that can be another sort of context to view them in, really. And again, if you really know what you're doing, which I didn't in this case, but you can do some weird and wonderful processing on the images that can show things like concentric cells or jets. Not that this image does. This was just playing around and just showing really false color. But I've seen some of the work that the experts do, and they're showing multiple jets or even disconnection events, all sorts of characteristics if you really know what you're doing. But also you need to be very careful that you don't introduce false artifacts if you're not an expert like me.
Yeah, that's one of the things you can do with comets, and anybody can do this. There's free software you can get, but it's called astrometry or astrometry. Astrometric analyzing of comets is what you were basically talking about, and you can get free software to run. So you can run your images through that, and it's amazing what the information you can get out about the comet. So that's quite good. That was Siding Springs, wasn't it?
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, this was Siding Spring Q3, so I don't think this is the one that's causing the excitement about hitting Mars.
Yeah.
This is a different one from. Let me see when I took that. That was 2009 December. I took that one.
Well,
recent again,
Springs, of course, was quite an event because it went so close to Mars.
Yes. Yeah.
Of course, they had the orbiters and the Mars rovers trying to take pictures of it, which they did. They got some fairly good pictures of it. But it caused a meteor shower on Mars, quite a heavy meteor shower, as Mars passed through the tail of Siding Spring Comet. Now, this brings me back again to something Stephen was talking about earlier, when he talked about the dust particles from the comet, and they don't have any light, like the light of the sun. Of course, there's another effect is when the Earth passes through the tail of a comet, as we do quite often, certain numbers of times a year. Somebody asked earlier about what was behind me here, and if you see on that big screen behind me, can you see that? Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Right, that's live. That's the live meteor detection coming in there. And if I show you this, this is okay. You got that?
Yeah. Looks like a shower.
That is quite a big meteor coming in through the Earth's atmosphere, and that comes from the tail of a comet, of course. Now, most meteorites that we find, or most meteors that come through the atmosphere, are the size of a grain of sand, but they can cause quite a big ping on the detection systems. This one particularly, this was quite a big fireball, in fact, and it was seen by hundreds of people, if not thousands of people, over the UK. And it was that was August. That was August. Wow. In fact, I think we managed to capture a picture of this fireball as well. I got it there. No, I haven't got a picture of it, but never mind. But of course, this is from a comet. This is the dust from the tail of a comet. So we can't get away from comets. You know, they're there all the time, doing all sorts of weird things to us.
Yeah, I was going to mention that basically all the meteor showers, the big name meteor showers, are caused by the Earth passing through the tail of a comet or sometimes a minor planet. And I have a graphic up there showing you the big name meteor showers and which comet's tail we're passing through. And that's just like what you mentioned earlier about it leaving a sheet of debris in our solar system. So it's a messy place out there. There's lots of little things to go through. And you know, you said about most meteorites being a grain of dust, basically. Very, very true. In fact, your rooftop is probably covered with these things now. And if you wanted to put a bucket underneath your I don't know what they call them over there, but we call them gutters or rain spouts, and after a storm, stick a magnet into it, you'd find probably dozens of meteorites on the roof of your house. So that's another benefit from comets. We get some really cool meteor showers.
I have a collection of meteorites, actually. I blame Nick Howes for that. He's always getting me meteorites, and I keep buying them. But quite a few very nice meteorites. I've actually got a piece of asteroid Vesta, as well as 2 lunar meteorites. So lunar grables from the sun, from this moon. And, they're fascinating to see, you know, because some of these bits have come from the tails of comets, and you look at them under a microscope. It's incredible to think this is from space. You know, this is wow, the birth of time. You know. So.
Yeah. I gave away a comet this year in my annual fundraiser, as you know, and holding it in my hand, it was just half the size of my head, and holding it in my hand, it was just unbelievable the thoughts that can go through your mind if you think about the natural world and think about where this thing's been and where it came from. And how it hit the ground in ancient Egypt 5,000 years ago, and here it is in your hand right now. You know, this thing's older than the Earth, probably. Those are the kind of things that fascinate people, and another thing that draws people into science. And then the results are great for our society. So comets, meteors, all the fancy things. You know, that's real important to get. I call them gateway events. You know, like the big X-class flares that might be on the news or something every now and then. It's usually incorrect reporting. There's usually horribly inaccurate science, but at least it gets people interested in looking up and seeing what's out there, including the pseudoscience, like the supermoon and all that garbage. You know, at least it gets people thinking about science a little bit, rather than Real Housewives or Honey Boo Boo or What's for Dinner. You know.
Craig's holding up his beer right there.
Yeah.
Is that a Scotty Allen, or?
To be honest with you, I couldn't find the paperwork for it because I put it away somewhere, so I can't remember which one it is. But that's one that I've got hold of. Yeah, so that's in my collection.
It looks like a Scotty Allen or something.
Yeah, it's a lovely piece. It's quite heavy as well for its size. Nick and I have just managed to acquire some beautiful meteorites from the desert in Oman. So we're busy classifying them.
Very lovely. We've got some questions, I think.
Like a chunk of the sun out here now, watch. This is the bit of the sun.
The sun? What's that? Someone said the sun?
The sun.
We have some questions about are there any bright comets for 2015? So it's probably worth just mentioning that there are some good resources. We'll put some up in the Facebook page, I think, resulting from this, perhaps not directly after the Hangout, but over the next week or so. We've got some URLs for websites where you can go to look up information on comets. But also, there have been, as there is always this time of year, some good astro calendars on blogs about events that are happening throughout 2015. Two of these are one from David Dickinson from Universe Today and many other blogging sites. He puts together normally over 100 events that are happening throughout 2015. Many of those are also cometary apparitions. But also, Loopy Victor also produces such a calendar, and we'll put the URLs up for these calendars as well, because there's not just comet events on there, there's occultations, there's moon phases, all sorts of interesting things that are happening throughout the year. Of course, one thing to say about comets is we mentioned they were like cats earlier, that they have tails and do whatever they wish, so these are at best predictions that may not come to be true, or comets may be brighter or not so bright as anticipated, but we also may get new comets discovered, so they may not be in the list, and suddenly we get the greatest comet of the century so far, something we always hope for. But I pulled out, for example, from the David Dickinson one, you can see January. Comet Lovejoy is expected to get naked eye visibility. Yep. In April, we've got Q1 Pan-STARRS, which may reach binocular visibility, and so may 19P Borelli. Again in June, naked eye visibility for Q1 Pan-STARRS. US 10 Catalina 2013, again binocular. Another naked eye potential one, US 10 again in October, and X1 Pan-STARRS may reach binocular visibility in November. Loopy Victor's site has many more cometary events on there. You can see quite a few as I scroll up here throughout the year. So I'm sure one of those will surprise us, either pessimistically or optimistically.
Can I just ask John a question? Reference the name.
Yeah.
Obviously, got Lovejoy, Pan-STARRS, things like that. What does like the Q2 and all that? Does that mean anything specific, or?
Well, the comets are generally named after the people or the organisations that find them. So Siding Springs, for instance, was discovered by the Siding Springs Observatory. Lovejoy, of course, or the various Lovejoys were discovered by Terry Lovejoy. So they get named. The various designations, the numbers are generally the date, the time, the year they were discovered, and the quarter they were discovered, the part of the year they were discovered in.
Okay.
But it's strange because they have a different naming structure than they do for asteroids, which are a bit different.
Yeah.
Excuse me. Terry Lovejoy has discovered so many comets. It's unfair, really. You should leave some for the rest of us.
Yeah, and of course, mainly now, I suppose most are discovered by the robotic scopes, like Pan-STARRS and Linear, etc. But yeah, we still see, it is I suppose a part of the hobby where the amateur can discover comets, particularly those that are scanning the skies regularly with binoculars or even their Mark 1 eyeballs, but I know there's some very prolific Japanese observers that discover many comets as well. So yeah. It is possible.
I think we owe a debt of thanks as well to Charles Messier, because most amateur astronomers obviously use the Messier catalogue, and Charles Messier himself was actually a comet chaser, and that was the reason he created the Messier catalogue, was so it didn't confuse like the other diffuse objects with comets. Yeah, so
yeah, that's right. He was quite a lot, and of course, one of the lectures I do when I'm lecturing abroad is I do on women in astronomy, and it's nice to see we have some ladies here on this hangout, of course. But one of the things that women in astronomy was, of course, Herschel's sister discovered 8 comets.
Wow.
And that was while she was cooking his dinner.
Oh man, that's bad.
I think Bill Haley found a few as well.
She didn't get recognition, and that's the point. I mean, it's like Cecilia Payne, for instance, who discovered that the universe was mostly made of hydrogen, and she was told by her mentor, who was overseeing her thesis, that she was talking rubbish. So she rewrote her thesis, her PhD thesis, and then a few months later he went on and published a paper saying most of the universe was made of hydrogen, and he got all the accolades for it, and she didn't. And it's interesting that a number of women in astronomy, and including cometary science, who didn't get recognition for the discoveries they made. And of course, we're trying to put that right now as astronomy in general, because we have fantastic people like Carolyn Porco and the Cassini mission and things like that. And of course, fantastic people like the members of Astronomy for Fun. You know, Margaret and Tracy and all them, you know, and they're all
Wonderful.
You know.
Did lightning strike you, John?
That was meteorite. Yeah.
Great comet simulation.
Yeah, that's right.
I'll tell you something while you're on that subject.
One thing I forgot to mention, Craig, was when you asked about how comets are named, of course, is the order of discovery. They are also numbered in their order.
Right.
So, you know, and it also designates whether it's a periodic comet or a long period comet. C, for instance, C6 would be a non-periodic comet, and a P would be a periodic comet.
Brilliant.
Excellent. So these resources we'll put up, as I say, in the Facebook group. There's quite a few to go through. Some really good sites about finding out what comets are in the sky at that moment and when is best to see them. Also, northern or southern hemisphere. But lots of resources there for you to explore and get information from. So hopefully that answers the question regarding are there any bright comets, but Lovejoy is probably the first one to have a go at. Okay, so anyone got Astro Buddies? Hey, and Cassie. Ah, Mini Cassie.
Mini Cassie, yeah.
Mine's asleep on the sofa downstairs.
He's not really an Astro buddy, but you know.
Oh heck, it's all about the bass.
I saw your new guitar, Craig.
That's brilliant. Okay, I think it's approaching 5 to 9, so we'll do a final wrap up. I think. First of all, a special great thanks to our guests, John McLean and Steve Ramsden. Oh, an Astro buddy from Steve as well.
Yes, in fact, one of our people on the show gave me this while I was in London.
That's it, Steve.
Mr. Craig Dawes. Yeah. Very some kind of collector's item, and it's very awesome. So I've kept it away from the dogs. They have not destroyed it yet.
That's brilliant. So thank you very much, John and Stephen, for joining us with the Hangout. It's been brilliant to have you on and make use of your expertise during the Hangout to answer the questions. That's great.
It's my pleasure. It's a privilege to be on. Thank you.
Yep, I agree. Thanks very much for having us.
Oh, you're very welcome. And thank you to all the admins turning up this evening and breaking away from your families over the Christmas period.
Yeah.
And for your images as well. Thank you very much for showing those. They were great. And hopefully we inspire a few people on AFF to have a go themselves. But imaging, I think, because the exposures can be quite short, you don't need particularly very good tracking mounts. If the comets are bright, obviously the ones that are further away and a lot fainter, you need very good tracking mounts and good pointing accuracy. But not everything needs that, and let's hope Comet Lovejoy puts on an absolutely brilliant show for us.
Hope so.
So thank you everyone for joining, and goodbye.
Bye. Have a great weekend.
And you.